Quality, we notice a dearth of members. If we could ask members to join us, we are in room 3191, and we're going to ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to call for the absent members. We have 3 bills and a Senate Joint Resolution up today. Once again, this is the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. We are in room 3191. If we could ask Senators Runner, Ashburn, Corbett, Hancock, Lowenthal, and Pavley to join us in 3191. Thank you. The only author I see here is Mr. Leno, who is here on SJR 17. I don't see any of the other authors here, Mr. Perez, Mr. Lowenthal, or Mr. Wright. So I'm going to ask Senator Leno if he would be kind enough to step forward, present to the rather modest subcommittee represented by the chair. But at least the measure will have been heard at that point, and we can take the matter up once a quorum has been obtained. Welcome, Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not find you lacking in presence. I'm pleased to present
Go far.
SJR 17, which very simply reaffirms our state legislature's historic commitment to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and also calls upon our President and our Congress to persevere in their commitment to become world leaders in the effort to address global climate change. And as we know, the House of Representatives has dealt with this issue in bill form this past June. It will be moving to hearings in the Senate in September, so this is a very timely resolution. California, of course, is now world recognized as having implemented model greenhouse gas reduction efforts here, and there's now growing evidence that this phenomenon of climate change is accelerating at a pace far beyond anything that Al Gore could have imagined when he first came up with his presentation a few years ago. There was an article that I came upon, Associated Press article with the headline, "In Hot Water, World Sets Temperature Record," as Hurricane Bill was hitting the Maine coast just this past week. It was noted that the waters off the coast of Maine were 72 degrees, which were extraordinarily high for that part of the coast. Usually you would find that further south in Maryland, except off the coast of Maryland, temperatures were at 88 degrees, which is what you might expect off the coast of Miami, except the waters off of Miami are well above 92 degrees. So the reason for concern here, of course, is the threat to the ongoing melting of our Arctic ice and glaciers. As we lose that ice, there's less refraction of the ice of the light, more absorption, which only exacerbates the phenomenon. The water recede even further, and there's now concern that very large sections of glaciers and of the ice on Greenland will soon be melting, and the threat to rising sea level is very significant. Another article of interest was in the New York Times just earlier this month, climate change seen as a threat to U.S. security, that military intervention could be necessary with effects of violent storms and drought, mass migration and pandemics. Military intelligence very concerned about all of this. So it's appropriate that this legislature puts itself on record restating our commitment to the reduction of greenhouse gases, and took note that there are now flyers being circulated. There will be activists here at the state capitol, I believe this Friday, Save California from Big Government Eco-Regulation. They want to repeal AB 32 and put an end to the California Air Resources Board. So the idea that this is even debatable raises greater concern, and I think also underscores the need for this resolution. So I have with me today from Oceana, who brought this resolution to our office, Santi Roberts, who's the California Projects Manager, and he will share more of the science of what is occurring with regard to global warming and climate change.
Witnesses in support. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Leno, Mr. Chair, and Senators. So I'm Shanti Roberts. I'm the California Project Manager with Oceana out of Monterey this morning. Oceana is an international marine conservation organization dedicated to protecting the world's oceans. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. We've got offices on 3 continents. And we've got about a dozen staff on the West Coast here, including 2 down in Monterey. Within the sort of the broad, scope of protecting the world's oceans, we focus on the sort of the major threats of sustainable fishing, bycatch of things that are not targeted in fishing, habitat destruction, protecting the food web, and various pollution concerns, including ocean acidification and climate change. And really, the sort of the big picture idea that we're trying to get across is that all of these elements are about maintaining and restoring the health of the ecosystem in terms of its resilience, in terms of its productivity, and this is particularly the case given the concerns that we all now have, we all now share, I think, with global climate change and with ocean acidification. So with that, I'm happy to sort of take any questions or dive into a discussion of the resolution itself, whatever the chair and committee members would prefer.
Thank you for your presentation. Before we go further, what I'd like to do is ask the clerk to establish a quorum. Please call the roll.
Simitian.
Here.
Runner. Ashburn.
Present.
Corbett.
Here.
Hancock. Lowenthal. Pavley.
Quorum has been established. Do we have any witnesses in opposition? All right. Are there any questions for the witness? Senator Ashburn, we are on SJR 17 at the moment. We have heard from the author and from a witness in support. Are there any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Any questions from the committee? We have a motion by Senator Hancock. Senator Leno, is there a close?
The very brief close is the concern here is not only to our environment, to wildlife, but also to business, to our economies, and to our national security. I would ask for your aye vote.
All right. Clerk will call the roll.
Simitian.
Aye.
Simitian, aye. Runner. Ashburn.
No.
Ashburn, no. Corbett.
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Hancock. Hancock, aye. Lowenthal. Pavley. We have 3 yes, 1 no.
We have 3 aye votes. We have 1 no vote. Your bill needs 4. The measure will remain on call so that absent members may add on as the committee meeting progresses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and thank you to your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Members, I'm going to ask that we take just, did we lose one of our members? We did. That we pause for just a moment while we ask if we can get other authors here as well. Senator Lowenthal, who's both a committee member and an author, as well as Assemblymember Perez. I know we have Mr. Wright here, but members, we have 3 bills on our agenda today, all of which are inexorably interwoven. So rather than having 3 separate conversations 3 times on top of the conversations which have already occurred on these bills in the Energy Committee, I think it might be helpful if we could get all of the authors here at one time. So can we put out the call, please, for Senator Lowenthal and Assemblymember Perez, because ultimately we're going to have to wade through 3 different bills that all have some significant bearing on the controversy in question. Sergeant at Arms, have we heard from Assemblymember Perez's office? Thank you very much. And have we heard from Senator Lowenthal's office? Also on his way. Thank you. Assemblymember Perez, welcome. Thank you so much. We have two of the three authors. We're going to wait for Senator Lowenthal. As I mentioned a moment or two ago, we have three bills on the agenda today. They're all inexorably interwoven, and I think rather than having three conversations with three different parties, it'd be helpful if we had everybody in the room for the same conversation so we don't have to duplicate that effort. So as soon as Senator Lowenthal is able to join us, we'll take up the measures. All it takes.
I don't ask for much from you, Mr. Chairman.
I just want equal treatment. All right. We have all three of the authors who are present. And if we can ask the committee to come to order, and if we can ask for everybody's patience given the size of the room and the level of interest. Must be a slow day here in the Capitol. Here's what I would like to suggest. Members, I'd like to suggest we take up SB 696 first, that we then follow that with AB 1318, and then we then conclude with SB 579, the Lowenthal bill. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Wright to come up with his witnesses. Before he begins, I want to give both Mr. Wright and others who are here the courtesy of letting them know where the chair is as we begin the discussion, because that may inform their comments in terms of where we go from here. And not to worry, everybody will get their chance to weigh in spite of the fact that we've got three bills that overlap significantly in terms of the issues. I would ask, however, that people be mindful that many of these issues have already been heard in the Energy Committee. A number of the committee members sit on the Energy Committee. Some do not, and so I understand that folks will want to make sure they communicate their message in full. But again, all of these bills have been heard. They're here on a double referral. Here's the situation in the chair's view, and that's all I offer it as, the chair's view. We are stuck in a very difficult place because South Coast has put us in a very difficult place. I don't say South Coast has done that by design. I just say, as a practical matter, we are in a very difficult place. South Coast has said, we're not accepting the court's ruling on CEQA, and we want to keep appealing. While that appeal moves forward, we've then got literally thousands of businesses that are stuck, that are unable to move forward and make progress in a difficult economy. We've also then got power plants that are stuck, unable to move forward when I don't think there's an awful lot of debate about the need. And the unfortunate part then is that we find ourselves being leveraged, or at least there's an attempt to leverage members of the legislature who are being told, you have to simply move this problem out of the way, and you have to do that by abrogating the court decision in a piece of litigation which is still pending, by disregarding CEQA, and by essentially weighing in on a credit scheme which may or may not be valid depending on who you talk to. I don't think it is either fair or appropriate for the legislature to be leveraged in that way, and I particularly don't think it's fair for the legislature to be leveraged in that way when the problem is one that is solvable and could have been solved by compliance. Now, that being said, I think those 3,000 businesses are important. I think those power plants are important. So then the question is there some way for us to move forward, make progress, not allow ourselves to be leveraged, not abrogate existing court case and in which litigation is still pending, not simply turn CEQA upside down, and not weigh in on the issue of the validity of the permits? I think there is a way for us to move forward on that basis. I also think that it is important, frankly, to give both of the parties to the litigation some incentive to settle this thing so that, again, the legislature is not leveraged into playing a role which, in my view, is not altogether appropriate. So in a perfect world, members, we would end up with an outcome, in my view, again, it's just the chair's view, we would end up with an outcome that says, let's let those businesses move forward. Let's deal with essential services. Let's see if we can make some progress on the power issues, but let's not be turning the legal process upside down. Let's not be turning CEQA upside down. Let's not be weighing in on the validity of the credits, and let's give these folks some incentive to sort their differences out in another forum, not in this one. We have 3 bills that deal with all or part of that range of issues that I have just described. My hope would be that Senator Wright would agree that we could move forward in his bill, and I want to respect his primacy as the author of his bill, in his bill with the essential services and with the small businesses that are out there, but do that in a way that doesn't abrogate the court decision, that doesn't render any findings or judgment about the validity of the credits, and that gives the parties, as I say, some incentive to keep talking. If we were able to do that, and clearly we'd have to give direction today to staff to do that, and clearly that would have to be acceptable to Mr. Wright, because if those amendments are unacceptable to him, I respect his role as the author. If he wants a straight up or down vote on the bill as it's presented today, that's his, in my view, that's his right as an author. If we were able to do that, however, then we might have the opportunity to turn to Mr. Perez's bill. Mr. Perez's bill, as I heard it in the Energy Committee, was really designed initially to deal with one thing and one thing only, and that was the ability of the Sentinel Power Plant to move forward. And I think that also could be done in a way that does not abrogate the lawsuit, that doesn't weigh in on the validity of the credits, and that doesn't turn CEQA upside down. That would mean stripping out of Mr. Perez's bill, if he were agreeable, the essential public services which are currently in the bill, because those would have been taken care of in Mr. Wright's bill if Mr. Wright was amenable to that solution. That then would mean we'd have 2 bills moving forward, again, understanding that the language would have to be drafted based on our direction to staff, that would solve a huge problem for South Coast businesses, solve a huge problem in terms of the demand for energy in South Coast, but not have the adverse consequences that I have described. Now, one of the challenges of moving forward in that way on an issue of this complexity, based on the hearings that we've had in other committees on these bills, is that there can always be a little difference of opinion later on about language. And I would hate to be in a position where subsequently the author of one bill said, no, that's not what I agreed to in committee. So how do you sort that out and provide some protection for all the parties, both that the will of the committee is recognized going forward, but also so that the author isn't in a position of saying that's not a bill I want to carry because that's not my understanding of the committee's actions? And the answer to me would be to have another bill, the Lowenthal bill, which would be identical to the first bill, also move forward out of this committee. A rare suggestion, but one that essentially gives us an insurance policy so that if somebody falls out of the mix as we move forward, we have a plan B. Mr. Lowenthal, I have nothing but the highest regard for you. Referring to you to plan B is not meant to diminish your role here, but I'd like Mr. Lowenthal, how about if we call you our ace in the hole? Is that a little more respectful? And so that would be my suggestion there as well. I think that is a way to unravel what has been a very thorny situation. And as I say, I think that still gives the parties some incentive to try and sort this out in the courts by a settlement agreement. But before we go to Mr. Wright, I want to hear from members of the committee because that's the direction I'm going to suggest we go as we hear from the witnesses, as we hear from the authors, rather. Excuse me. Mr. Runner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think we're caught between some very difficult issues and choices. Here's, I guess, the bottom line for what we're observing. And that is, I get the fact that there are concerns, particularly in regards to some of the power plant issues that were a part of the original Wright proposal in that process. I also am interested in seeing that there is at least one power plant that seems to be okay. And so here's my question then, is am I to assume then the process that's being set forth in the Perez bill is indeed the model that will allow other bills to move forward, given the same kind of language and issues, so that we are consistently dealing with the issue of the grid, power, and not inconsistently dealing with that. So I would hope that at least what we're establishing then is indeed something that we can use as a model for future legislation, given the fact that the policy will have been a decided policy based upon the bill that we are moving forward. Is that a fair assumption?
I think not. And while I understand the logic of your argument, and I take your point, I think the struggle that I've had as an individual member of the committee who has sat through these conversations in the Energy Committee and about to go through it again is, on the one hand, on the other hand. On the one hand, I acknowledge the need for the additional energy. On the other hand, I don't want to be in a situation where any entity, private sector or public sector, comes into the calls of the California State Legislature and says, we're going to hold our breath until we turn purple and make the people of the state of California pay, and unless you say uncle, they're going to bear the cost. And in my view, that's what's happened to us. So what I've proposed is, you want to see a little good faith? Great. We're going to let those businesses move forward. We're going to take them off the table. We're not going to let them be pawns in somebody else's game. We're going to do the same for essential services. And to show a little good faith while we're at it, we got to put one of the power plants in, and credit to Mr. Perez for being the first guy up to the batter's box with a bill to do just that. But if we let loose of the other two plants at this point, then I don't see any incentive for people to sort out their differences and to come to terms on this still very large set of issues, which is, does the credit system meet state law? Does the credit system meet federal law? Has CEQA been complied with? What's the ultimate outcome? So I want to try and minimize the hurt, make some progress in solving the problem, but leave all of the players with some reason to stay engaged.
I guess the question that I will ask Mr. Wallerstein in that process then will be, indeed, are we just talking about two more power plants? Are we talking about a host of potential power plants that would be then helpful to our grid? And I don't need that now, but I think in the discussion that will come forth. Because, again, I think that should be our ultimate goal, is trying to figure out how to secure the grid in terms of that, but at the same time then not hold absolutely every potential power solution back, and yet somehow find that we've made in good faith by moving one forward. And that's all I'm looking for, is consistent policy, that folks can actually understand what it is that we believe here in this committee when it comes to the issue of public policy, good public policy, and what we're trying to protect.
And what I believe is that South Coast ought to abide by the law, that if they're not in compliance with CEQA, they ought to be, that they ought to sort out their differences in the appropriate venue, and they not ought to come to this building and this committee and expect us to be held hostage at the expense of not only those power plants, but those essential services and those businesses. So in my view, I'm waiting for the thank you letter that I feel sure will follow in the next day or two for being willing to reach that far. But as part of that response, I then expect to see people move forward and go back home and sort out their problems the way they should. Senator Lowenthal, you've been very patient. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to clarify to make sure I understand what you've said. You have said that you would be supportive of SB 696 moving forward if the language in SB 696 was the same language, was the language that was in there now was stripped, and the same language that's in SB 579 is placed into that bill. Is that not correct?
Pretty close.
Tell me what.
I think the thing, first of all, again, it's Senator Wright's prerogative as the author of his bill to either accept or reject that opportunity. Second, there is, I think, probably some discussion as well about what is currently in the Lowenthal bill, your bill, Senate Bill 579, and so we need to be clear about the contents of that and any possible amendments there. But yes, it is my proposal that in a somewhat unusual twist that we put out two bills, if the author is agreeable, we put out two bills that are essentially identical, so that if, as language is refined, the author discovers he no longer wants to move his bill forward, we are not then in a situation where we still have all those businesses and all those essential services and that power plant at risk. And it seems to me that our chances of avoiding that unfortunate circumstance are far greater if we have Plan B or the ace in the hole represented by SB 579. Okay, fair enough?
Okay.
All right, so then I think that unless there are other comments or questions from members of the committee, that takes us to you, Senator Wright, and you've sort of heard where I am, sir, but please go ahead and present as you would like, and then at some point I'm going to ask you, how would you feel about amending your bill, and that, of course, is your call, sir.
Okay, if I could, let me, pursuant to our conversation today, if I could ask the sergeants to just distribute the 6 points that kind of came out of discussions that we had this morning as a follow-up to the discussion that we had yesterday. 6 points essentially follow what you described.
Well, Mr. Wright, that's the difficulty. Every time we think we have agreement on language with you and your office, sir, there's another little pushback. So we need to get to yes based on what the committee staff and the discussions previously have suggested rather than the constant one more bite of the apple, sir.
There is no second bite of the apple, sir. What we discussed yesterday is what's contained herein.
All right.
You said you were concerned about a couple of things when we spoke. You said you wanted the lawsuit to be remained intact.
And, Mr. Wright, at this point, you're going to walk through your 6 points? Is that how you'd like to start? Go to it, sir.
You said you wanted the lawsuit to remain intact. That's point one. So we would amend the bill to say that the lawsuit remains intact. That point two becomes that the language notwithstanding the lawsuit and the court order, that we would give the district the authority to issue credits. The concern that I saw in the draft that you had is that under that language, the district had no authority to issue credits. So we would go through an entire exercise and end up nowhere because there has to be a provision for them to legally issue credits. That was not contained in the draft of Senator Lowenthal's bill that I reviewed.
And, Senator, I believe the staff has explained to you why the notwithstanding language poses some problems. I'm going to look to the staff to confirm that. Mr. Pester?
Yes, there's some. Let me see here.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, the issue on the notwithstanding the decision of the court is in Senator Lowenthal's bill in SB 579.
Yes.
That says notwithstanding the decision in the court that you can address the existing facilities and you can address the essential public services and the exempt facilities, the way it's drafted in the Lowenthal bill in SB 579, but not in a way that deals with the Rule 1315. The Rule 1315 is what is subject to the litigation, and that's an issue there is the Rule 1315, which we've discussed and discussed with you.
I'll get to 1315 in number 4, if I might. One of the other concerns that I'd heard, now again, when this first started, my concern was that we do all 3 power plants. And I can discuss later why I thought and still think that that makes good sense, but in an effort to compromise, initially it was 1 power plant in Vernon that was a concern. Then it was 3 power plants that were a concern. I'm now saying that there would be no power plants. The reason that you see the 50 megawatt issue there is that there are a number of renewable power plants that actually are power plants only in the sense that they're converting landfill gas. And technically, if we said no power plant, the renewable landfill, for example, in Palos Verdes and in Valencia, those would be outlawed because technically they're power plants, even though they're converting landfill gas and they're just feeding that power into the grid. None of them exceeds 50 megawatts. Thus, the language here that specifies that larger power plants would be exempted. The concern that Mr. Pester raised relative to 1315, again, I'm open to a method of working around 1315. I'm advised by counsel that absent 1315, the district has no authority to issue any credits. So if you don't make some reference or have a way of getting around the 1315 rulemaking, then you're back stuck where the district has no authority to issue credits. I'm fully prepared to take language, Mr. Chair, that recognizes that we go beyond 1315. That works for me. Certainly in the process of this litigation and the like, one of the things that existed was 1304. I would be fully prepared to say that we would acknowledge 1304 as was the previous bill, the previous rulemaking, pardon me. Again, the concern with 1304 is that absent some ability to issue credits, 1315 was the enabling rulemaking that allowed for the issuing of credits without some reference to how you get to allowing the district to issue credits. I'm sensitive to the concern about 1315 and its appearance of abrogating the lawsuit, and I'm fully prepared to take language that gives the district issuing authority absent referencing 1315. I'm open to that. I talked to 4 lawyers and none of them had a way to do it. I'm certainly amenable to find one if someone has it. What I thought I had constructed here was a way of referencing that the district could only use the accounting rule, which 1315 is, for the purpose of issuing the credits that were allowed pursuant to 1304. If there's a better way to do it, I'm amenable to that. The 5th issue in there was to preclude any future challenge to the district authority to issue credits. This language, again, must be ambiguous, and that the bill does not impose a state mandate is just a function of not ending up mired in appropriations. Those are the 6, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Witnesses, Mr. Lowenthal, please.
May I ask a question? So, it seems to me that consistent with where 579 is, I don't have a problem with number 1.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with number 2. I think item number 3 is not necessary at all any longer because what I would like to say, I would like in item number 2 to say language that says notwithstanding, let's go back to number 2, notwithstanding the existing lawsuit and court order or sequel.
Excuse me, Senator Lowenthal.
What? I'm just
let me just interrupt for a moment, please. Folks, we've had months to get this language squared away, and we don't have it. And we're not going to get it done out loud in a chalk talk here in the course of this meeting. What we can do is agree on some basic principles and ask staff to draft that language.
Fine.
Committee staff, for the record. The very concern I have is that people are going to keep pushing against the language right up until the last minute, which is why I think it's important to have a backup bill. But if it couldn't get done between yesterday, when I reached out to this author, and today at 11 o'clock, when the staff came to me and said, we can't get there, it's not going to happen in the next hour. So what I would like to do ultimately today is get agreement on some principles rather than accept some very specific language and requirements which may or may not have unanticipated consequences. Thank you for letting me interrupt, Senator.
Thank you. The principles, of the 6 principles that you have before, I think number 1, I think is fine as a principle. It's what we want. No interference or abrogation of the existing lawsuit. I think number 2, as a principle, I like the language that says, language that notwithstanding the existing lawsuit and court order or sequel, the district shall have the authority to issue credits for purposes of issuing permits for all businesses and government entities, period. I don't think we need to refer to consistent with item number 4. I don't think you need, as a principle, number 3. I think the 4th one is the one that is the most troubling. And as a principle, what I have in 579, I'm just saying you can include by just saying the district can use a past accounting system for Rule 1304 and 1309 for purposes of generating and issuing credits, period. That's what 579 says. It says that they will use the system in past, and I don't understand the 5th principle. I just don't understand. I would just like more clarification, just as principles. I'm not advocating language, but I'm just saying as a principle, I think that you can change number 4 to be very consistent with by just saying the district will use the whatever accounting system for 1304 and 1309 for issuing credits, past accounting system, and just leave it at that. That's the principle that I think. And then you have staff draft the language. And that's all I'm saying. Because I think the basis of it is to see whether we can go back to 1304 and the original 1309.1 before amended to see whether we can issue all these permits. They will issue all these permits and not get into not only abrogating the lawsuit, but really talking about the 1315, the amendments to 1315. And to state that you've got to go back to 1304 and 1309, I think that's really the heart of what 579 does. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. And Senator Corbett, not to put words in your mouth, but as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, I'm guessing that if I asked you, you'd have some concerns about notwithstanding language that's in sentence number 2. And would you comment on that? Because this is the very issue we're trying to. This is why I think drafting in real time here in the committee is an unwise venture, members.
Well, I do understand, and this is the first I've seen this language, but I do understand that there are opinions that there is a way to draft this and allow certain permits to go forward, which will not create an abrogation of the lawsuit, and that sounds very promising to me because it gives us an opportunity to deal with the situation and not do something we shouldn't be doing, and that is, imposing our will on the other branch of government and pretty much ignoring a court decision. And the language, notwithstanding the existing lawsuit, I'm afraid doesn't make it clear that we aren't thinking abrogation is okay. So I think there's a way to do this. I'm not quite sure if that's the right language or not, and I have not had an opportunity to read the Lowenthal bill either. So I guess I would just say let's just be careful with that language. If we're truly not abrogating the lawsuit, let's make that clear. But I do believe we have a path to move forward.
Senator Corbett, again, the language notwithstanding is what I got that was drafted by the committee on page 3, line 23 of the Lowenthal bill. I mean, I'm
saying I haven't seen that.
Okay, I took it and tried to incorporate that because that seemed to have consensus with what people had. The issue that Senator Lowenthal raises again, and I'm not a lawyer, and certainly Senator Corbett, you are. It is my understanding that as a permit issuing authority, Rule 1304 is no longer valid. That was why I made reference to 1315 for the purpose of administering these credits. If that's inaccurate, then what Senator Lowenthal raises becomes certainly a way to go. But it is my understanding that as of today, that there is no authority in 1304, which was the previous rule making that the district had engaged in. It had no ability to issue credit. So that means that we would go through an entire exercise and they would still be legally prohibited from issuing credits. That was why I made reference to it in this limited fashion.
And I would only interrupt to observe, members, if after years of litigation we haven't got it sorted out yet what is or isn't valid in the way of rulemaking and rule amendment, we're not going to get that sorted out this afternoon, which is why we need a solution to the problem, which is not predicated on accepting one side or the other's notion about which rules are or are not valid under pending litigation. What I'd like to do at this point, Senator Wright, I'd like you to complete your presentation. I'd like to hear from your witnesses in support. We're going to hear from witnesses in opposition. I'm then going to ask you about possible amendments to the bill. You'll either agree or not agree, as is your prerogative, and then we'll vote on the bill. So please feel free to go forward with your presentation.
Okay.
Take all the time you need.
Let me do the presentation again. This bill came about, members, because of a lawsuit. It wasn't something that I walked in here this year saying, oh, I want to have a bill that deals with a lawsuit. The ramifications are huge. We're losing $1 million a day while we negotiate this. Every day that goes by, the state of California in aggregate and all levels of government watch $1 million fall off the table. We're looking at a total permit all-in element of somewhere north of $8 billion. I'm talking about property taxes to local governments. I'm talking about payrolls. I'm talking about somewhere north of 65,000 jobs. That's what got me here. The concern that I looked at, given all that we've been through recently, $200 million annually to the general fund is more than we needed to fund healthy families without a tax increase. So as I looked at all of that and all of the hardship that we came to, I frankly thought this would have been the biggest no-brainer going, that we would take this. It's also $50 million to local governments with respect to property taxes and the additional permits and fees. Frankly, when I introduced the bill, I was also concerned about the power plants. Some of you may have seen the audit report from the state auditor that referenced the fact that in the Southern California area, which is predominated by Southern California Edison, we're talking about a shortage of power, that we have an abundance of old power plants, and that those power plants, given their age, are not necessarily reliable. This isn't Rod Wright talking. It's not the utilities talking. This was a report by the auditor saying that we face a crisis. One of the concerns that I have is that because of a rule that was done a long time ago, where we made air rights and air permits property rights, the cost today of permitting a power plant pushes into somewhere north of $300 to $400 million for air credits, not land, not the equipment, just the air credits right now are pushing at $400 million. It was on that basis, by the way, members, that the state of California, during the energy crisis, said to the South Coast Air District, there's got to be a way that we can include electricity as one of the essential services, just as we included water as an essential service, just as we included municipal services as a essential service. There's got to be a way that electricity, which is also an essential service. One of the things that I find interesting in not including it is that, members, 1/3 of all the electricity that we generate in California is currently used to move water. Water and electricity are inextricably tied together. If you don't have any electricity, you can't move water. All of the water conveyance agencies in Southern California are all currently tied up because they've got permits on hold as a result of this bill. We've got hospitals tied up. If a hospital members wishes to apply for a permit for all of the emissions that are necessary for the inclusion in a hospital, so I've got a St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, they would have to go out to bid for somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 or $200 million for air credits. They would be covered if we were able to do this. I could go on and on. I've got in Palos Verdes, I mentioned earlier, I've got in Palos Verdes Peninsula where there once was a landfill. That landfill is decomposing as landfills do. When it does that, you have methane that's created. That methane is currently being flared. Flaring methane to the atmosphere and to air quality is probably the least efficient thing that you can do. We're going to capture the methane, run it through a turbine, feed it into a currently underserved electrical area that will actually improve air quality and provide needed electricity and prevent the need for flaring in Palos Verdes. In order to do that, you need air credits. So I looked at initially in 696 a holistic solution. When I first presented it, the concern, again, as I mentioned, that people said to me, we're concerned that you're going to build a power plant in Vernon and that the power plant in Vernon would be a dirty plant. When I looked, Vernon was a spec plant. Don't need to discuss it more than to say that as of today, there will be no Vernon plant because the Energy Commission did not issue permits. That plant's gone. Then the next concern I had was that people did not want to have the 3 power plants that were peakers that are in the Edison territory. And there's been some concern raised that there's no planning process for how you arrive at getting to the permits for those plants. Every one of those plants members went through an Energy Commission review, completed a full CEQA review, then went through a permit review with the Public Utilities Commission, where they were then granted permits to operate. During the time that they were granted permits to operate by the Public Utilities Commission, those contracts were placed in rate base, so that there was a reference to RPS, there was a reference to the grid reliability. All of that was done by the CEC as well as the Public Utilities Commission. I'm not happy, per se, about taking it out. I've compromised, I believe, by rescinding the reference to the lawsuit in this bill. I've compromised, I believe, by removing all 3 power plants from the bill. Frankly, it bothered me because the power plants represent close to 7,000 jobs, each of which that pays over $60,000 or $70,000 a year each. If I take those 3 out, again, that pained me to do, because the thing that I understand is that if this were a hot summer, if next summer is a hot summer, the ratepayers in that district will pay in excess of $2 billion for air credits that will be tacked on to their electric bills. So on a per capita basis, at the average household, we're talking about somewhere around $20 or $30 a month for air credits to cover the cost if we had a hot summer and you ended up having to run all of the power plants in the basin. In addition to that, members, you're also talking about running dirty power plants, so you'll also have increased air issues as a result of that. So taking the power plants out, to me, I thought wholly counterintuitive. But again, as we say in South Los Angeles, and is better than nan. So I'm fully prepared to take, in this case, some 57 or 58,000 jobs, and I'll come back and fight the issue of the power plants at a later date. The concern I have is that we make a rule here that allows the district to issue all the remaining credits in a manner that is legal and unchallengeable when we get out of here. That was my concern. There are no ups and there are no extras. Frankly, to close, I didn't come into this as a friend of the district. In fact, probably more so than anyone in here, I have issues with the district and the plaintiffs. So I walk in and say I didn't like either party before I walked into the room. That notwithstanding, I was not prepared to just sit by and watch 70,000 jobs die on the vine while everybody was pointing at who was responsible. That's how the bill got here. Again, it was 65,000, excuse me. I recognize that I clearly can't get 3 power plants out of this committee. That pains me to no end. Let me just express that. I've compromised to take out all 3 of those power plants. I don't do it because I think it's a good idea. I do that in the spirit of compromise. I recognize the concerns. I'm not a lawyer. I mentioned the other day in the Energy Committee, we have thrown out CEQA lawsuits around here. I mentioned that there were a number of them that have been done. We won't do that today. So we will leave the lawsuit in place so that can continue. The only thing I ask you, members, is that those essential services, that those projects that would be dealt with as a part of this lawsuit be allowed to move forward in a way that is legally enforceable. That's the sum and substance of the bill, and for that I ask you for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Do you have witnesses in support?
Just a couple, Mr. Wallerstein. And there's probably a few more that are concerned as well.
What I'd like to suggest, members, ordinarily we do 2 minutes for each witness and then ask for 2 witnesses and then ask for just Me Too's. Given the complexity of the issue, what I'd like to do is say 6 minutes for each side, sort it out amongst yourselves at the direction of the author in terms of how you want to use that first 6 minutes for actual testimony, and then we'll do Me Too's after the 6 minutes has finished, whether that's 1, 2, 3, or 4 witnesses. Without objection, that's how we'll proceed. And if you wait just a moment, we'll get squared away here on the timer.
You start.
I got the 3, 6, 4.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I've got a whole lot of information with it.
And
I'll respond to those.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Dr. Barry Wallerstein, the Executive Officer of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. I'm here on behalf of our governing board in strong support of SB 696. And Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it at that today and go over the details at another time.
thank you, sir. Next witness.
Mr. Chair, members, Jay Hansen, State Building Construction Trades Council. We think this is a fair compromise. This is important for us purely on the jobs front. We've got people with 25 to 30% unemployment right now in the building trades. This has to move forward, and just ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Witch on behalf of the California State Pipe Trades Council, the State Association of Electrical Workers, the Coalition of Utility Employees, and the Sheet Metal Workers. I'll just add to this. We would have preferred the broader bill. We think this bill deserves to pass. I get a call every day from our business managers. We're looking at 40% unemployment in the South. Folks who have about 6 months worth of banked time, which means within 6 months they're losing their health care. Shortly thereafter, they're losing their homes. And we have a situation where the federal government is moving mountains to stimulate this economy. And we need this building to focus on jobs sometime in the near future, because it's tough out there, and it's not only bringing down the state budget, but it's ruining families throughout the South State, and we need resolution to this issue. Thank you.
Question from Senator Corbett.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Witch, I don't know if you can answer this question for Mr. Hansen. I noticed he walked out the door. When he was referring to the compromise, was this the compromise to move forward to allow the issues for the necessary services, the small businesses, and the one plant to move forward? Was that the compromise he was agreeing to, or?
I won't speak for Mr. Hansen. I was speaking to the bills described by Mr. Wright. Frankly, for the building trades, when you talk about those essential services, there's not much meat on the bones. You know, we don't build a lot of dry cleaners and gas stations. We build hospitals, and we build refineries, and we build power plants. And those are the jobs that Mr. Wright was referring to. So we support the bill moving forward in the form that was described by the author as what we would like to see.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mike Poe on behalf of the California Public Utilities Commission. We were in support on the original or last version of SB 696, which addressed the broader power plant issue. We recognize the committee's compromise between the author and just would still state that we believe there would still be some grid reliability concerns in the LA Basin, and ask the legislature to consider another vehicle to address those issues.
Have you shared those concerns with the folks at South Coast?
Yes.
Thank you. Next witness.
Senator Smithian.
They've declined to do it. Next witness.
Yes. Senator Smithian, members. Kelly Boyd on behalf of Southern California Edison. Remain in support of the bill. 3 plants remain critically needed, as the PUC pointed out. We would really like to see a process to move those forward. Those 2 other plants, we need in excess of 1,700 megawatts. The need remains. We can't guarantee the plants would still be in line and get constructed if they can't move forward soon. And it does remain a critical need. We can't stress that enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Bill Lamar, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance, speaking for some 14,000 companies in the South Coast region. When I spoke before this committee, the Energy Committee in June, I tried to emphasize that it's small businesses and essential public services that are the real issue here. And I hate to see it get clouded with electric utilities. When you go through my part of the state, you don't see closed signs or out of business signs on a single power plant, but you do on hundreds of small businesses. And these are the people that have lost their businesses, their credit, their jobs, their benefits, and just had their whole lives turned upside down. And we urge you, as I did then in June, to really speed Senate Bill 696 out of committee so that we can get back to revitalizing the economy as President Obama and Governor Schwarzenegger have mentioned that small businesses can do. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness.
My name is Russ Meppman. I work for Fazio Cleaners. We operate 7 environmentally safe dry cleaning stores in Southern California, which employ about 130 people. Our latest store opened in Chatsworth with a dry cleaning machine that's sitting idle for a lack of an AQMD permit, which we've been waiting for since October of 2008. We've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in this location, and we are incurring high monthly lease costs but are unable to operate at full capacity. We're only employing 5 out of 15 employees. This moratorium has had a punishing and a detrimental impact on our operations, even though we are and continue to be a responsible owner of other AQMD permits. We hope that SB 696, or a reasonable alternative, can correct this situation immediately, and we encourage its timely passage so we can begin normal operations at this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
David McClune with the California Auto Body Association. And over 100 of our members have been affected down there, and we'd definitely like to get this bill passed, so we're asking for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you to all of the witnesses who've testified and who are going to testify for being here. I know it's no small inconvenience for many of you. Next witness.
Mr. Chairman, members, Eloy Garcia for the Western States Petroleum Association in support of the bill. With one quick point of clarification, our understanding, and I want to clarify this point, is that as you've proposed, Senate Bill 696 would deal with all of the non-power plant projects that are subject to the permit moratorium. Is that correct?
And I believe the reason you're asking is because you've got some industry issues and you want to make sure that they're covered, even notwithstanding a prohibition. Excuse me, that's the timer going off saying we're at 6 minutes. And the answer is yes, they would be included, notwithstanding the prohibition on power plants.
Notwithstanding the prohibition on power plants, and there may be some large sources that we're going to have to look at. Yeah.
Why don't we clarify that for the response? Go ahead. Let's grab the microphone. Let's ask the question again, and let's get the answer.
Well, there's some issues about what are small businesses and what are not small businesses that we need to clarify in the bill.
Well, that's exactly my point in asking the question, Senators. I think there's still some ambiguity about which of the projects. I mean, we're suggesting that we're going to cover all of the non-power plant projects. It's pretty straightforward. If we're covering Rule 1304, there are specific types of projects. About 90% of the projects that are subject to the permit moratorium are covered by that rule. We want to be clear on whether we're proposing to cover those or not.
And you would hope that?
We would hope that we would cover and not make a distinction whether it's large or small, but rather make a distinction about whether they're subject to the permit moratorium or not. These are emission reduction projects.
Thank you. Senator Lowenthal.
I concur with the witness that what my purpose was to let all those projects that were not covered by the lawsuit, that would have gone through, that would have been permitted under 1304, be allowed to go forward. They were never questioned in court, those projects. The only thing that was questioned in court was the validity of creating the amendments to 1309.1 to change into the priority category, the power plants, and the credit system. These projects were never covered in the lawsuit. I think they should go forward.
Okay. There you have one member's view, and stay tuned. We'll see where we go. We're at the point where it has to be Me Too's. If I could ask the witness to identify himself.
I can't just do a Me Too. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I represent all three power plants, and we're sort of being faced with the sequel of Sophie's Choice here of having to choose between them. If not this bill, you need to fix the reliability problem in Southern California. All three plants have determined needed. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to step away from the microphone, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Paul Gonzalez on behalf of the cities of Bellflower, Diamond Bar, Irwindale, La Mirada, Lakewood, Santa Fe Springs, and Monterey Park in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Next witness.
David Vandergriff with the California Hospital Association in support of the bill.
Mr. Chair and members, Bruce Mignani on behalf of Tesoro Refining and Marketing. I'd like to echo Mr. Garcia's concerns. Thank you.
Alex Pugh with the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, representing 1,600 member companies, over 700,000 employees, in support of the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Kendra Dijogo with the Guelco Group on behalf of the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance, echoing the concerns that we'd like to see a comprehensive fix, but understand the value of compromise, and would like to see this bill move forward.
Thank you for your comments. Next witness.
Mr. Chairman, members, Bob Garcia, the other Garcia. We have no concerns with the bill. I represent the County Sanitation Districts of Los Angeles County. We applaud your work and thank you for moving the bill forward. Hopefully.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mike Rogie with California Manufacturers and Technology Association in support of the bill.
Next witness.
Rosie Thompson on behalf of Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. We're in support of the bill.
Next witness.
Mr. Chairman and members, Brian Lundgren on behalf of Amoresco's landfill gas to energy plant in Valencia and on behalf of the County of Orange in support.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Mark Brigade on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce in support of what we believe the bill will eventually say, I think. Thank you.
Applaud your optimism. Thank you. Next witness.
Blair Knox with the California Independent Petroleum Association in support.
Next witness.
Hugh Bauer on behalf of the cities of Murrieta and Pasadena, also in support.
Next witness.
Mike Murray with Semper Energy in support of the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Paul Gladfelter representing the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce and also Caterpillar and its dealers in support.
Thank you.
Eric Bakke with the Los Angeles Unified School District in support of a fair resolution so we can maintain our school construction program.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Mary McDonald with the California Independent System Operator. We operate the grid for 80% of the state, and we're in support of the previous version of the bill.
Thank you. Next witness. Do we have any other witnesses in support? Do we have any witnesses in opposition? If we could ask the witnesses in opposition to come forward. And again, what we're going to do is offer up sort of 6 minutes for substantive testimony and then ask folks to just follow up with their Me Too's. I'm hoping, Doctor, if we could ask you to step away from the table so these folks have a little more room. And we'll put one more over there. And have we sorted out who's going to use the 6 minutes so that we don't have a wrestle over the microphones? That'll be okay. All right, just hang on a moment. We'll set the timer.
This is going to be absolutely seamless, Senator. You'll be impressed.
All right, go to it.
Senator Smitty and members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Angela Johnson-Mazzaros. I'm here today on behalf of California Communities Against Toxics. As I understand the proposal that's currently upon the table, the 696 will include reference to using 1315 as the mechanism for addressing credit generation. Maybe I should say it this way.
Go ahead.
Maybe I should say it this way. We remain opposed to using 1315 as a method for generating credits. And if the bill were to include that, we would continue with our very strong opposition to the bill. We appreciate that there appears to be movement on the issue of the power plants. However, we believe that the critical underlying issue is whether or not we rely upon 1315. It is the crux of the issue, and putting 1315 into something that comes out of this body will in fact be taking positions on the issues that are currently under debate. So with that, I would say that passing Rule 1315 and passing 696 and having that be the vehicle that comes out of the legislature will result in additional delay to what we believe is really the core and central issues that we're trying to address through this process. We have long said, and we said before the Energy Committee when we were up in June, that we believe that the essential public services and the exempt facilities ought to be able to move forward as we're debating these issues. And as members of this committee well know, there was an exchange of letters in which we repeatedly made that offer. Unfortunately, we were not able to reach a compromise with the district to allow that to happen. We believe that I'm not sure how we're handling this, but 579, as we understand it, will include the notwithstanding language. However, we support, given that more than a year has gone by since the secret document has been completed, we support allowing essential public services and 1304 exempt facilities moving forward, even though the court clearly has prevented that from happening under its existing order. We believe that this is a fair and just outcome, and that there are parties who are now brought into this and effectively being held hostage, and those parties should not be. Finally, I will just say that if we can today, we have also called for a needs assessment in order to address the energy issues. And I don't know if that's an issue we're discussing at this portion of today's proceedings, but I did note that both Mr. Runner and the representative from Southern California Edison, as well as a few others, talked about really the critical need to figure out how we're going to deal with siting power plants. And we believe that the needs assessment process that we talked about since March provides that process that allows us to have a clear, coherent methodology for how we're going to site power plants, making sure that they're sited, and for moving the state and its energy needs forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shauna. Thank you.
Next witness, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to follow up on Ms. Mazzaro's point that Senator Runner made actually an excellent point about the importance of not going power plant by power plant in front of this body. I am not actually clear on what the proposed SB 696 now contains, but I am concerned that if any piece of legislation comes out that allows just one power plant, that will be the siting mechanism, the approval mechanism. And that's very important in the context of the world where, in fact, the proposed Vernon power plant is not dead. It is still on the Energy Commission's docket. It is still anticipating getting credits through this mechanism. And finally, I wanted to point out that we have, in fact, prepared a motion that we intend to submit on an expedited basis to the Superior Court to set free the essential public services and the businesses under Rule 1304. We would be filing that today, except that we are here in Sacramento. And so we trust that that will provide an actual means for the court to say what it should say, which is those businesses should get their permits.
All right. Thank you. Next witness.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Adrian Martinez, and I'm here on behalf of the Natural Resources Defense Council. I'm the counsel for NRDC and the Coalition for a Safe Environment in this litigation. And I just want to address one brief issue, which is the 1315. I think my colleague Angela Johnson-Mazzaros described it very well, but I want to just reiterate that there were several documents released by the Air District in 2006 that reference an existing tracking system. Thus, there is a system that can be fallen back on. There is not a need for reliance on 1315. And the other critical point is that essentially is a key issue in the litigation, 1315. There needs to be environmental review of 1315. The courts have sided with the plaintiffs, and this committee should not overturn that. Thank you.
Next witness.
Jesse Marquez, Director of Coalition for a Safe Environment. We are one of the plaintiffs in the case, and we do oppose the bill. We do see the new proposed SB 579 as a solution. We do just want to make one comment in that we are a community-based membership where we have members in over 25 cities, and our concern is that we review technologies. And the fact that they're using the best available control technologies, we have discovered is not good enough. There are various levels of technology that have efficiencies from 95%, 90%, 80%, 70%. And what's happening, they're choosing to use the least efficient of the best available control technologies. Thank you.
Next witness, and we're at that Me Too point. So if you just give your name and your organization and your position, please.
My name is Fred Pfeffel. I'm with Deputy County Counsel with the County of Los Angeles. And we're authorized to take a position on the language. I realize that's in a state of flux. So very quickly, we opposed the bill to the extent it would not allow the need for essential public services to the extent that there is any circumvention of CEQA. We would oppose that, and to the extent that the bill would not allow the operation of more power plants. Or would allow the operation of more power plants without the requirement to replace existing older ones with less efficient power plants.
Thank you for your comments. Next witness.
Chairman Simitian, and members of the committee, John Kelly, Deputy Director, Los Angeles County Department of Public Works. We build capital projects for the county.
Sir, we're in the state your position, and that's it, please.
We remain opposed to 696 unless amended as discussed to include essential public services and businesses as included under 1304.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other witnesses in support who would like to simply register their support? oppose, opposition? All right, then, Senator Wright, we're back to you. Here's my question. Questions. I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely.
The committee.
Go to it.
I think I want to start with the South Coast. A little discussion in regards to a couple things actually. Again, we keep talking about a limited number of plants, 3 plants, and I guess my question is that in reality, as we're going through this process, aren't we actually also closing the door on other future plants in that regard, in regards to the policies that are being set forth, and therefore the ability for us to strengthen the grid? And then the other thing I guess I want to ask, particularly to Dr. Wallerstein, is the chair made a comment, and somebody made a comment in regards to the fact that concern about the power plants, and there was a comment that said, well, you ought to be talking to South Coast about that. I'd like a little more exploration to what that comment was in regards to, clearly there was an indication there that South Coast has the ability to move forward with these plants, and it's their decision not to. So I'd like a little more explanation behind, maybe to explore that a little bit.
I'll be happy to answer those questions, Senator. Our role is specifically just to do the review of the air quality impacts and compliance with the rules and regulations at the local level, state level, and federal level relative to air pollution. The actual licensing of the plant, as I believe the committee knows, is done by the CEC. If it is a contract plant for an IOU, then they have to receive PUC approval. We are not the power plant experts. We consider the CEC, the PUC, and the Cal ISO as the experts to determine how many power plants are needed and which ones are needed. Once they make their determinations, then we simply ensure that the plants comply with all air quality regulations that they would be subject to. The power plants are caught up in this permit moratorium because there is a freeze on available permits that we would provide at a mitigation fee to power plants, and there simply are not enough offsets available on the open market to supply even the 3 power plants that were mentioned. In addition, Senator Runner, as I believe you know, there is a provision in state law that allows our air district to transfer credits to either the Antelope Valley Air District or the Mojave Air District upon concurrence of both boards. These are downwind air districts that are impacted by transport of air pollution from South Coast to the high deserts. Unfortunately, even though there is specific state law granting our ability to provide credits, and we argued such in the court case, the judge found and decided in a manner that doesn't allow us to transfer the credits, even though state law specifically allows that, and that impacted Victorville 2 solar gas hybrid plant and the Palmdale solar gas hybrid plant.
So we're talking about more than just then the 3 that are mentioned there. Again, let me go back to this other question. That is, I guess I'm still unclear in regards to the thought that somehow you all could go ahead and approve these plants, because that certainly was at least the indication that was given when it is that I think it was, I forget whether it was Edison or who testified that the need for these plants to be upped and create a reliable grid.
Let me clarify my comment, because I think I think we all understand the permitting regime. My point when folks were coming to the table was, we're in this fix because the district is unable to issue valid permits because the court has said they have attempted to do that in a way that's unlawful. And so this goes to the very heart of my frustration, which I articulated at the beginning of the hearing, which is we got a bunch of people who are beseeching us to solve a problem that is not of this legislature's making or this committee's making, but is a function of the fact that a district provided permits inconsistent with law, at least as the litigation currently stands.
Sure.
That's all.
Mr. Runner, let me try another thing that you raised. The question is not whether or not you build power plants. The district, to your point, does not have the authority to grant power plants. The only issue becomes how much you pay for the credits. For example, as I did not mention, Anaheim, the city of, was also ensnarled in this project. they smartly figured out that they should just go buy credits on the open market before they got caught. Now, they paid a price that was 5 times what they were selling for had they gotten them out of the priority reserve. What seemed like a lot of money at the time is now a bargain, because they would have to pay at least 10 times more than they paid for the credits that they have if they were buying them today. So the question is not whether or not you get the power plant built. The only question we're deciding with this is whether or not you're able to use the priority reserve to do the credits. Because if you go buy the credits on the open market and you determine with the Energy Commission that a power plant is necessary, you can go buy credits and build your power plant right now. So we're only discussing how much does the ratepayer pay for the credits. That's the only discussion here today.
Senator Runner, could I also clarify that in the court's decision in the CEQA lawsuit, rather than our statutory responsibility to determine compliance with air quality regulations, the court asked us to determine for each and every plant whether or not there was some alternative, such as a solar plant outside of our air basin, to determine what the transmission corridors would be, and to determine if there were new corridors to be built, what the environmental impacts of those corridors are. And in our view, that didn't fit with the scheme that has been set up by the legislature and the governor for the state of California for energy planning.
Let me just again clarify, and I appreciate that input. And at least at this point, I wanted those thoughts at least expressed, so at least the chair and the members could see my concern in regards to trying to pick losers and winners, when clearly caught up in this debate is a very important issue to actually my district and actually Senator Ashburn's at that point in both of those areas that are a part of that. So in that sense, I think you can see where we are a bit confused as to why it is that we would, again, for purpose of example, pick winners and choosers without being a part of a logical debate as to why and how we would do that.
And I would respond that it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. I would respond that it is better to make some progress, to respond to the legitimate concerns of thousands of businesses who are represented here today, who have been damaged through no fault of their own, to let those essential services go forward and to make some progress on the issue of utilities while still keeping people engaged by having some skin in the game to sort this out. Because the comments that the doctor made a moment ago about the unreasonableness of the court's direction are being heard in the wrong venue. I would say take it back to the courthouse, but don't expect us to sort that out for you here. And if we simply say we don't care that you've issued permits which may or may not be valid, and we don't care that the court says you haven't complied with CEQA, then all we've done is reward that bad behavior. And applause only makes a bad actor worse.
And I would agree. I would agree that it's better to move and as you say, share the light. I just wish and hope that there would be a fairness in that light that's being shared. And at that point, I think that's what our concern is.
If I could add a point, Mr. Runner, Senator Runner, to your concern, the district, and I think wisely, has made a policy decision that the rulemaking that they were engaging in relative to 1309.1, which is where they included the power plants, they've made a decision. I think it's wise that they're not going to pursue that action any longer. So the issue of whether or not there will ever be power plants included in the priority reserve beyond what this committee may choose to do with the Sentinel plant will be back here for legislation, because just as Dr. Wallerstein referenced, the issues of transmission and all of the other related issues that go along with siting power plants are way beyond the scope of what the district is capable of doing. Recognizing that that's where the court went, they wisely said, we're not in that business, and they withdrew. So we will, as the legislature and the entity charged with designing how power is acquired and procured in California, that issue will rightfully come back to rest with us again. It unfortunately was a part of what is the old version of 696, and it will not be in the version that's being presented to you today.
And quite frankly, my challenge is I would be happy to make a motion for the original version of 696.
I'd like that, but unfortunately, it's not an option available to me today.
I'm not sure you're a second option, Stu.
If it's not, and again, I recognize that I may not get anything at all. Again, as I stated at the outset, I wanted 65,000 jobs. I'm prepared to take about 58,000, and 58,000 is a whole lot better than nothing. I would have obviously preferred the 65,000. But I have to tell you, as I mentioned in my opening, my fear is that if there's a hot summer in Southern California, which includes your district as well as Mr. Ashburn's district, that your constituents and mine will face a $2 billion tack on to their electric bill because you will pump all the old power plants and you'll buy emergency credits from wherever you can get them from. You'll buy gas on the spot market, and you will have more pollutants pumped into the air because at that point there will be an emergency and you will turn on all of the power plants irrespective. And I've seen that happen before.
And I believe the issue could be even worse than that in terms of cost. But again, as we continue with a grid that's not reliable,
right.
And again, as we well know, that issues that happen in one part of our state in regards to generation problems easily roll into other parts of our state. And this, I think, could carefully be pointed at if indeed in the future we do have a problem with generation come some hot summer, as an example as to where it is that this legislature sat on its hands when it could have gone ahead and proactively provided the reliability of the network that we appear that we're going to refuse to do.
Senator Runner, I would hope in a different word from the chairman that we don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. And I would love to have a total fix. My initial proposal was for that. That isn't possible in the time remaining in this legislative session. So I hope that I can get out of this committee with as much as people are comfortable with doing.
Mm-hmm. Further comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Senator Hancock. Thank you.
Thank you. I come from a part of the state not at all affected immediately by this. And I am not familiar with the actors there in this. But I'm very uncomfortable being asked to do what I really agree with the characterization of the chair, adjudicate or act as a fallback court when a court has spoken. And because the issue seems to be one of an overbroad ruling in regard to the small businesses and others that were caught in the net, and there was indication from one of the witnesses in opposition to this bill that they were expediting a request to the court to narrow that decision. I'm just wondering why the plaintiffs and South Coast didn't ask the courts, or did you, to narrow the decision prior to now? It's, again, the turning blue reference that the chair made.
We've had 3 rounds of mediation. The most recent is the exchange of letters that I think many of the committee members have seen. And unfortunately, we were unable in any of the mediation to close the gap on anything other than the very important subject of the court canceling 3,000 existing permits. The main issue is you have to have a mechanism to supply the credits for the credits to be issued, and that is what I believe the chair has been suggesting that we work on language over the next couple of days to see if there's a way to resolve that.
Does NRDC and the others who spoke in opposition agree with that? It just
if you could step forward and respond to Senator Hancock's question very briefly, please.
I think that is essentially correct, but we do believe that we offered a solution to the district that would have allowed those credits to go forward, and we're prepared to do that since these issues are of critical importance to us and our constituents without the district. So I think that's
right. Let me just see if we can stop the ping pong here for a minute. And Doctor, you have a slightly different view of what happened? That would be a yes or a no question?
Yes, I do, sir.
Great. Okay, so now we know that we have a difference of opinion which hasn't been resolved here today after 2 years' worth of litigation. Further questions, Senator Hancock?
No other questions.
All right. Senator Wright, here's what I'm going to propose if the members are willing. The chair, and here's how I would suggest that we help you solve as much of the problem you've set out to solve as possible, if it's acceptable to you. And given the complexity of this issue, it's a little hard to articulate. So I'm going to do my best. Then I'm going to turn to staff, And then I'm going to say, let's recess for 5 minutes while you have an opportunity to chat with your staff to make sure that you know whether you want to say yes or no. I just think rather than asking you to make a split-second decision like that, it might be good to take a moment and sort this through. I think the closest or easiest way to describe the outcome that I was trying to communicate at the beginning is to say if you took what is Senator Lowenthal's bill, SB 579, and then looked at the comments that were on page 7 of the analysis of that bill, where the staff analysis, this is for 579, euphemistically says clarification needed. As you and I know, that's the way staff says, how about you take some amendments, and those are A, B, C, D, and E on page 7 of the analysis for 579. I would supplement that paragraph by saying that the language to be drafted subsequently would respect the following principles: no abrogation of the litigation, respect CEQA to the greatest degree possible, no determination on the validity of credits. It would authorize essential public services and, to the point that was raised earlier, exempt, help me with the term of art again, exempt.
The 1304s.
The businesses that were covered under
exempt businesses. I'd rather not make the reference to 1304 if we could avoid that reference given the difficulty of the various rules in question here. But the answer was all of the exempt businesses, not just the small businesses, which was the question that was raised by someone earlier. And delete any reference in the bill to authorizations for power plants. And I think that if we take the SB 579 language, the amendments that are described in paragraph 8 on page 7 of the staff analysis of that bill, and honor the provisions that I have just articulated, let me look to the staff and see if there's anything else that we need to put into the bill. I'm not going to ask you for a response right now, Senator. What I'd like you to do is just take a minute so that you can think through the implications of that.
And I can, you know what, I can expedite this.
All right.
Of what you mentioned, I'm fine. The only issue becomes, and we'll leave this to staff to nail out, is that as you've described it in this 579, there's still no mechanism to administer credits. That notwithstanding, if we're able to clear that hurdle, I'm good to go right now.
Then I think your point is well taken, Senator, and what I would suggest is that we also ask, when the chair asks for a motion to that effect in a moment, that there be a reference to a tracking process, which I think would be helpful. That's right. But I want to flesh out the tracking process to say I think the tracking process is going to be indispensable in terms of making sure that there is the ability to issue valid permits that you go through. So
outside of that, Mr. Chair, I'm good to go.
We will reference that concern and issue to the staff for drafting. Then we won't take the 5-minute recess that everyone was so eagerly looking forward to, and instead we'll say, is there a motion to that effect from a member of the committee? I have a motion by Senator Lowenthal. Is there any further debate or discussion?
I just want to clarify, there was a brief little discussion at this one point where we were talking about power plants, and then all of a sudden there was a little conversation in regards to other big projects. I didn't quite understand that, and I know Senator Lowenthal said, no, that's not my intent. So I'd like to clarify exactly what that was about.
There are approximately, if there had not been a lawsuit and there had not been, the district had not amended their regulations, there are a large number of projects that would have gone through, would have been permitted today.
Right, gotcha.
All this says is all of those that were not subject that would have been permitted under the existing regulations, 1304 or 1309, before they were modified, they all go through. We're not going to hold any of them hostage in that way. That's what it says.
Okay.
So there's so-called exempt facilities.
Right. Or facilities that were covered that would have been permitted. So all projects that would have gone through that were not the subject of the lawsuit We're not going to pick winners and losers.
Okay, that's my concern. Is that somehow there seemed to be a little bit of vagueness in regards to maybe other people were going to get caught up.
Nobody else is caught up. Nobody's going to come back and say, "Why didn't you include me?" If they would have gone through, we're letting them. That is not the legislature's intent now to get involved in picking winners and losers. They would have gone through. The litigants in the case had no desire to get involved, either the South Coast or the other party, in picking winners and losers in that, so we're not going to do it.
Go ahead. Staff has a question.
The other issue is whether or not, or to restate in the bill that doesn't affect new power plants.
That's correct, and to the extent that there is another piece of legislation before us today, we'll deal with that on what is a different basis.
And let me say as well that I hope we're making clear here that we're not prejudicing or, as a part of this bill, chaptering out the ability to look at other projects independently. So whatever happens to those other power plants is a separate discussion, and this does not chapter or cancel out any effort there.
We have a motion by Senator Lowenthal. We're going to ask the clerk to call the roll. Oh, forgive me.
As amended.
One more. Any closed, Senator Wright?
Very briefly, I appreciate the indulgence of the chair and the committee today. Again, I can't overstate the importance of this. There's almost $2 billion worth of stimulus money that will flow to the Southern California region. There are a number of hospitals that are currently tied up. You heard from the Hospital Association. There are a number of schools that are tied up. Again, we will be back, members, to deal with the issue of the policy of power plants. It is not currently in this bill, but we'll be back to do that again. And we're not dealing with, in this committee, members, the issue of how do you site power plants. That's not the province of what you do here. The issue only becomes how do you or should you include the power plant in what is called the priority reserve, or those credits that are cheaper. I would submit to you that we should, just as we include water as an essential service, electricity is just as essential. Given that I mentioned that a third of all electricity that we use is used to move water, it seems to me inconsistent to not include them. Based on that and the principles set forth, I would ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you again, Senator. Call the roll.
Simidian.
Simidian, aye.
Simidian, aye. Runner.
Aye.
Runner, aye. Ashburn.
Aye.
Ashburn, aye. Corbett.
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley, aye. That's 7 yes.
Congratulations, Senator Wright. You have 7-0.
Thank you.
Bill is out. Members, I'm going to suggest a slight change. And Mr. Perez, I appreciate your patience. I'm optimistic it will be rewarded. But could we take up SB 579, and the chair is hoping that that measure will be identical to the measure that just went out of the committee, and that therefore both the presentation and the comments on the bill will be very brief. Senator Lowenthal, is that agreeable to you? Then without objection, if I could ask you to take the presentation chair. Mr. Perez, hang in there. Thank you. And Senator Lowenthal, if it's not presumptuous, let me just ask. We have a bill 579. The staff has recommended some amendments. Would you be willing to take those amendments as contained as authors' amendments? Thank you.
The amendments in the analysis that they've said, and I will accept those as authors.
And then also the amendments in terms of drafting direction, which were given to staff in the previous discussion regarding the prior bill, which is SB 696. You're prepared to take those as authors' amendments again?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Would you like to present then on the bill as amended?
Well, you know, I had a long presentation, but we've just heard the presentation because you just passed SB 579. So I'll just be very brief instead of reiterating what's gone on. You know, I did this, you know, to facilitate this process. I think it's been a very now positive process that's going on in the legislature. I can just say, why am I doing this? Let me give you some examples why it's, from my district, why it's critical that we pass SB 579. I have a fire station in my district, fire station number 12, that cannot open now. It's ready to open. It has everything because it can't get its air permit. Caught up in this litigation, in this suspension of all permits. I have the City of Long Beach's water department. They can't put their new backup generator, already permitted, already gone through all the review process for their sewer system. This is the backup generator for the sewer system. For whatever reason, this is not considered an essential service, and so it is it falls under 1304, but it can't go forward because it's been suspended. I have Miller's Children's Hospital in Long Beach. Has gone through a massive expansion. It is not able to open. It is scheduled for an opening in October. It is just sitting there fallow now. The major children's hospital in southeastern Los Angeles, because it can't get its permit because it is not part of the litigation, not part of anything else. This is why I'm here before you today. I think that we should allow all these businesses and government agencies in Rule 1304 and 1309, that's what we just did in the previous bill, that were not the target of the litigation, that were just swept up in this litigation, to be able to go forward while the issue of whether 1315 is valid or not and whether the crediting system is valid will be decided by the courts. And we are neutral on that. We're not supporting it. We're not opposing what the courts did. Let the courts do their function. The committee analysis, as I mentioned on page 7, has very good suggestions. I've already taken those as author's amendments. I will work with the committee to further strengthen this bill. I don't think we need to go through why the need for this bill. I urge your aye vote.
Senator, do you have witnesses who would like to speak at this time?
Yes, I hope I do.
All right. Witnesses in support, please come forward. And because we've already heard the previous measure, we're going to ask for 2 witnesses at 2 minutes each, and we're going to let the author sort out who his lead witnesses are.
Maybe one from the business community and one from the environmental community would be with the one speaking.
All right.
Mr. Chairman and members, Eloy Garcia for the Western States Petroleum Association, also in support and very, very much appreciative of the Senator's efforts here to keep the dialogue going in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Communities for a Better Environment, and we do support this measure. Thank you very much for supporting it, and it will make our jobs easier as litigants if this is adopted and we don't have to actually argue over a motion that would release these businesses, and I trust that we'll have a chance to talk about the tracking language.
Thank you, and given the fact that everybody's being so concise, we're going to let them speak more than just their name and their position. Same rule will apply for opposition, if any. But still, let's try and keep it brief. We are going to limit ourselves to 4 minutes. Go right ahead.
Mr. Simonian, I'd like to really thank Mr. Lowenthal for his efforts on this. We believe it's a reasonable compromise given the important issues that are on the table, that setting these facilities free is an important critical issue for our constituents, and we're very much appreciative that this is going to happen and happen soon. Thank you very much. We're proudly in support of this bill.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
My name is Adrian Martinez, here on behalf of the Natural Resources Defense Council. I, too, want to thank Senator Lowenthal's efforts to wade into this especially difficult issue, and I also want to thank this committee for doing the same, and we're here to support this legislation.
Thank you. Next witness.
Jesse Marquez, Coalition for a Safe Environment. I'd like to thank the committee and the senator. It was, as a plaintiff, it was never our intent to have any negative impact on essential services. It was never our impact to have any impact on any small businesses. Our only concern as a community-based organization is that if we're going to approve projects that are going to have a negative impact on the environment and public health, use the best technology. That's all we're asking.
Thanks so much. Next witness.
Jane Williams, California Communities Against Toxics, and we wholeheartedly support this and want to thank the members of the committee and committee staff who've worked so hard, as well as Senator Lowenthal's staff, to put this together in a very short time.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Kelly Boyd on behalf of Southern California Edison in support, again, with the concerns that we need the 3 plants. Thank you very much.
Love to hear that. Thanks.
Mark Brigade on behalf of the Cal Chamber. As stated before, we believe we are in support of this bill as well.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Tina Andelin at the Planning and Conservation League. We're grateful that a solution was found in this bill. We're grateful for the author's efforts here, and we support the measure.
Thank you. Next witness.
Bruce Mignani, Tesoro Refining and Marketing. Want to thank the Senator for his efforts and the committee for contemplating what he brought to the table. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
John Kelly, LA County, in support of the bill. Appreciate the opportunity to avoid over $8 million in permit fees for the newly opened LAC USC Medical Center. We have 3 other hospitals under construction that are potentially subject to this, we thank you very much.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chair and members, Brian Lundgren on behalf of Amoresco in support of the bill.
Thank you so much.
Mike Rogie with California Manufacturers. We applaud the senator's efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Nidhi Bautista, Coalition for Clean Air. We want to thank the senator for and ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Next witness.
And also Bonnie Holmes Jen, American Lung Association of California, also supporting.
Thank you. Next witness. Do we have any other witnesses in support? Do we have any witnesses in opposition? Do we have any witnesses in opposition? Third and final call. Do we have any witnesses in opposition? All right. If not, are there comments or questions from members of the committee? If not, we have a motion from Senator Pavley on the bill as amended. We want to let members in so they can vote on the measure, Senator Lowenthal.
Can I close?
Senator Lowenthal, is there any close?
Well, I just want to say that one of the positive things that I think we can all be proud of is in the process of doing our legislative work in finding solutions, really that's why we're here, we have done more than, if this bill passes, solve a simple problem. We have brought together the various sides, the various parties who are thought to be always in opposition. The business community, the environmental community, and we have formed a coalition that really supports good policy. And so with that, I think there are tremendous implications for going forward in the future that we can bring people together to find real solutions to our problems. I ask for your aye vote.
Call the roll.
Sumitian?
Aye.
Sumitian, aye. Runner? Aye. Runner, aye. Ashburn? Aye. Ashburn, aye. Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. Hancock? Aye. Hancock, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Aye. Pavley, aye. It is 7 yes.
Congratulations. That bill is out, Senator. All right, members, that leaves us with AB 1318. Mr. Perez, thank you for your patience. I think it was both helpful and important for you to be here to hear the prior discussion so you sort of know what the lay of the land is as you step up to present your bill. And before we get started, it's my understanding that you have had conversations with the committee staff and that you have agreed to take as authors amendments provisions which would, one, strike the provision relating to the abrogation of the NRDC case and instead authorize SCA QMD to carry out the provisions of this bill. Number two, revise a reference to the rule relating to credit accounts. Number three, require certain findings by the ARB and the CEC. Number four, narrow the CEQA exemption. And number five, sunset the bill in 2012. Do I have that right, sir?
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. We appreciate your willingness to take those as authors' amendments. And why don't I ask you to go ahead and present on the bill at this time? And you've been very patient about working with the committee to try to get to yes on this, and I want to recognize and acknowledge that. And thank you for it, sir.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Sumitian, as well as members of the committee. I appreciate the conversation. No problem be waiting. Great points that were made by both bills before me and our members. Though AB 1318 is narrow in its focus, I fully understand that this discussion is in the context of broader issues and additional legislative vehicles. I took the time yesterday, as well as before that, to speak with as many senators as possible to try to move us to a point where we can agree. And so this is what we came up with. The abrogation of the lawsuit is a sensitive issue, and I agree that we must find a pathway forward that strives to not compromise the pending court case. I also accept, though there have been court dismissals on this issue, that there is still suspicion about the validity of emission reduction credits. In light of this, I agree with members of this committee that AB 1318 should also contain an administrative mechanism to ensure emission reduction credits satisfy federal and state requirements. With respect to the CEQA exemption contained in the bill, I also understand the desire to narrow the CEQA exemption and that it only apply to the selection, credit, and transfer of the credits. Since the crux of our current predicament is directly related to the emission reduction credits issue, limiting the CEQA exemption in this regard makes sense to me. I do want to convey that though I am in agreement with most of what has been proposed to my office, there are still some details that need refinement and closure. But I have been assured that my office will have the appropriate time and consideration to work these issues out. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for all your time and consideration. I look forward to the continued discussion. With me in support of this bill are co-sponsors, Mr. Tony Gonzalez, representing CPV Sentinel.
Thank you. And before we hear from the sponsors, let me just say, given the action taken on the previous bills, it obviously becomes appropriate then to remove the essential services provision, which was inserted in your bill earlier in the process. As I recall, on the Assembly side, we will, of course, communicate that we have removed that issue from the bill with your concurrence, of course, to folks in the Assembly so that they understand that you honored your commitments on the Assembly side, but that we asked on this side of the building to deal with those issues in the Wright and Lowenthal bills, if that makes sense to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
Very much. Thank you. Let's hear from your sponsors.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Tony Gonzalez, representing Competitive Power Ventures, and I'm also here today authorized to represent Jay Hansen with the State Building and Construction Trades Council. We are the two co-sponsors of the bill. I want to thank the chair of the committee and everyone involved for helping us get to this point in the process. I do want to thank especially Assemblyman Perez for introducing the bill. The bill has been narrowed down to become a one-project bill. And there has been a lot of discussion over whether that's appropriate or not. The 2 points I'd like to make regarding this particular project are the following. One, it is located, although within the South Coast AQMD's district, it is outside the Los Angeles Air Basin. And secondly, it is a peaker plant designed specifically to support the expansion of renewable energy in the region, without which we don't see how Southern California Edison could meet its RPS goals and perhaps more aggressive RPS goals in the future. The permitting of the project has been extensive, years and years, appropriately so, lots of public input. There is not only no opposition to the project locally, there is a great deal of support for the project. You're familiar with the jobs impact, economic impact, all of that. Without going over those issues again, I think you've heard all of that, and I think it's all been stipulated that it is a great project environmentally. What I would like to do, if the committee has questions, is to allow Bill Kissinger, who is our outside counsel for CPV, to answer any questions the committee may have regarding the process, the characteristics of the project, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness? Only if there are questions. We have other witnesses in support. Please come forward. And by my watch, you're at about 3 minutes, so we could ask the next witness to limit himself to 1 minute, and then it'll be me too's, please. Next witness.
Mr. Chair and members, Ed Manning, KP Public Affairs, on behalf of GE Energy Financial Services. We're a partner in this project and strongly support the bill, and thank you for the chair and staff's efforts to make this work.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chair and members, Don Gilbert, representing Wintech. The facility will be located on our property, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Duncan McFetridge, representing the State Pipe Trades Council, State Association of Electrical Workers and Sheet Metal Workers, in strong support of the bill.
Thank you so much. Next witness.
Jerry Cole, Hydrogen Ventures, representing Americhem LLC and Americhem Power, suppliers of emission control technologies. We support the bill and believe, however, that some of the objections coming from the environmental side could be overcome. If I could address some of the misconceptions about emission control technologies that have been dismissed.
I'm going to ask you to do that at another time in another forum, all right?
I'll take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Barry Wallerstein, South Coast Air Quality Management District. Our agency is in support of the bill.
Thank you very much.
Kelly Boyd, Southern California Edison, in support. Still looking for those 3 plants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members, Brian Langone on behalf of Amoresco in support of the bill.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Do we have witnesses in opposition? Witnesses in opposition. We're going to allow about 4 minutes for the witnesses in opposition and then go to the Me Too's in the group, if any. And Assemblyman, if we could ask your staff member to step away for just a moment and make room for our witnesses. Thank you very much. Appreciate the courtesy. Welcome.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Adrian Martinez, and I'm here on behalf of the NRDC. It's a little bit unclear to me kind of what's in the bill and what's not. I mean, I guess I'll eventually see the language, but we are concerned about a one-facility solution to the underlying problem. As has been identified, the credit system in the South Coast needs some serious reworking to make it work appropriately. And so because of this, we have serious concerns with this legislation, and we look forward to seeing the revised language, but we still have concerns and don't believe this is a viable path forward to siting facilities in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon, Angela Johnson Mazzaros. I just want to make 3 really quick points. First, it's been noted that this facility is outside of the basin, although it's controlled by the basin's air permits. The fact of the matter is that the basin in which this facility is sited is at 422% of the PM standard. And with this facility, it'll be at 455% of the PM standard, according to the CEC's analysis of this facility. Secondly, I'd just like to note that this facility will emit 1,200 pounds per day of PM, which has serious and critical environment and public health impacts. And the third thing that I will note is, because we haven't seen the language, I'm not sure if this has been addressed, but the previous version allowed this facility to rely on 1309.1 as adopted in 2007. The district has been very clear that they're abandoning that rule. So I don't know how that works and what needs to be done about that, but we believe that's not a viable way forward.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Shauna Lazaro, Communities for a Better Environment. I wanted to follow up on that point. That 0.6 tons every single day of particulate matter is a lot of new pollution. The mechanism for generating these credits legally is unclear, and there is another solution that we have proposed. We have proposed it in public, in letters back and forth to the district that I believe were provided to the entire Senate, whereby shutdowns of old power plants would provide the pollution credits necessary for this facility or any other facilities that would be determined to be necessary under a needs analysis that were rigorously undertaken as we've proposed. So this is not, AB 1318 is not the solution to getting legal new power plants. So I would urge your no vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in opposition?
Jane Williams, California Communities Against Toxics, and I would just concur with the comments that were made by my colleagues before me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Jesse Marquez, Coalition for a Safe Environment. We're also concerned the fact that we do not want to see regular legislation to approve one power plant at a time. I did mention before that we do have members in 25 cities, which includes members in Orange County as well as Riverside. And since we're a public health advocate organization, we want to make sure that when they do have an environmental impact assessment, or if they do have a health risk assessment, that they include a health impact assessment, because our members want to be assured that they're in fact using the best technologies. And we would encourage them to work with us and our organization in exploring these other companies that they may not have considered in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other witnesses in opposition?
Questions.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Ashburn.
Assemblymember Perez, how is it that your bill deals with a single project? That would be the Competitive Power Ventures Sentinel LLC project. That's the only project identified in this legislation. Did you contemplate, as the author of this bill, including other power plants that may similarly have encountered the difficulty as a result of the litigation over the authority of the district on their offset credits?
Initially, no, because I didn't understand how huge this issue really was. Over the course of time, most definitely, and have always been open to that. But knowing how it is, the issue here now, and the fact of the matter is that, at least for my district, this is very important. When we talk about jobs and the economy, I reverted back to the original thought, which is this peaker plant.
So your bill was introduced to deal with a problem with a facility in your district, but you now, as a result of the dialogue and all of the information that we've received, acknowledge that there are other facilities that similarly would fall into the same circumstance.
Most definitely.
Okay. Mr. Chair, could I ask the representative from the Air Quality District to come up, because I'd like to explore this question of how many other facilities are similarly situated?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to see you again, Doctor.
I've already asked the question on your way to the microphone.
Yes, Senator. I guess first I would like to make a distinction between power plant proposed projects that are within the South Coast Air Basin versus those that are outside the air basin but yet still within our agency's jurisdiction. And the Sentinel plant, as you were hearing, is in the Coachella Valley, is one such plant. We had been approached, as I mentioned earlier today, in response to a question from Senator Runner about two other facilities, one in Victorville and one in Palmdale, that are hybrid plants that include solar as well as conventional fired natural gas. And as I mentioned previously, there's a provision in state law that allows the transfer of credits from our bank to these downwind air districts, which have air pollution transported from our region to their regions, and that's the principal nature of their ozone non-attainment problems. And so there's those two plants. In addition to those plants, there are the three that have been discussed at length earlier today within the air basin, which have power agreements with Southern California Edison. Besides those three, there are 8 additional plants, but I want to point out that while we have 8 proposals that people have approached us on, what they, I believe, are really doing is they're jockeying for position in future bidding process by Southern California Edison in most cases. So they're trying to move along the permitting process so that when they put in a bid, they'll be more competitive in the bid
But without
process.
speculating about their motive, are any of those 8 in the similar position with respect to the review process or the role that the district would play?
Yeah, there's one project that I would like to call attention to, and that's a Los Angeles Department of Water and Power project, where in that case they are repowering an existing power plant. So in essence, we're going to get reduced emissions at that site and better energy efficient, lower CO2 emissions, and so on, and more modern technology used. The other power plants are a variety of things.
Thank you. So I guess my next question is for you, Mr. Chair, which you've expressed that your intent would be to have this bill go forward with a single power plant proposed or contained within the measure. So how do you reconcile the treatment of the other 2 facilities plus the 8 that are similarly situated with respect to the district and their authority?
First of all, Senator Ashburn, as always, I think you raised very good points. The bill came to this committee with one power plant in it. That one power plant is a stretch. In my view, it's a big stretch, because notwithstanding any of the arguments any of us can make for that one power plant, the question I would ask the doctor before he gets back to his seat is, under existing court rulings, are you able to authorize the permits necessary to go forward?
Without action of this legislature, the answer is no.
So it is a stretch. That being said, I am prepared to stretch, and as I said, and I don't recall if you were here earlier in the meeting.
I've been here for every minute.
Then forgive me if I repeat myself. I think there's, let me take a big step back. It's been a fascinating committee hearing today, and there weren't any good outcomes today. There were only less bad outcomes. I think we've done a pretty good job so far, and I'm optimistic we're about to keep doing a pretty good job on less bad outcomes. One of the things I said at the outset of the hearing is I'm struggling because, on the one hand, I would like to see us make some progress on these issues. There are a lot of innocent victims who came up and testified today and said, look, we're caught in the crossfire, and this doesn't have a damn thing to do with us. Could you get us out of this, please? I found that testimony compelling, just as I did in the Energy Committee. On the other hand, I got some other folks who came up and said, what on earth are you thinking? You're going to turn the rule of law upside down because you're being held hostage. And that wasn't very appealing to me either. So we've got an author who says, I think we can make some progress in meeting the energy needs of the state and the South Coast, and he makes some arguments as to why he thinks his situation is unique. Different members will be persuaded more or less. But my goal is to both make some progress and still keep people focused on actually solving the underlying problem without coming to this legislature and asking us to undo the rule of law. Now, I understand you have a different point of view, and I understand it. I get it.
Well, let me
but my hope is that by leaving a couple of the plants still in the mix, that there's some incentive out there. Folks who are opposed, you just saw the California State Legislature give some indication it's prepared to approve one of these plants, and I'm hoping that gives you some motivation to sort this out. People who support the measure and who would like to see it be 3, I'm hoping you got the message we went to 1, and as of today, that's as far as we're prepared to go, so maybe you ought to go back and sort this stuff out. That's my view about how to keep people engaged, as I said earlier, to have some skin in the game. I don't think it's a great outcome. I don't think there are any great outcomes to be had, given the presentations that we've heard today and in previous meetings. The one other thing I would offer, Senator, is I think you raise, in my view, an important point, which is, so now what? Where do we go from here? And I do think that if the Assembly member was amenable, I've had some conversation with committee staff about trying to have some sort of a study about the needs of the region so that we can talk about sort of where do we go forward from here. Let me ask Mr. Pester to describe a little bit what that might look like with his microphone. And I don't think it will be sufficient to assuage your concerns, but it is an acknowledgement on my part.
Well, Mr. Chair, don't presume.
All right. Well, I'll see.
I mean, seriously.
So, Mr. Pester, if you describe.
Yeah, it would be a study prepared by the Air Resources Board due in 6 months that would look at how we meet the ones through cooling requirements, AB 32 requirements, renewable energy requirements, clean air requirements, and ensuring system reliability in the South Coast Basin. So it would be more of a needs assessment for the South Coast Basin, and this was an issue that was discussed in Utilities and Commerce Committee, and
the work of the Energy Commission, the work of the district in reviewing the applications, the audit that was referred to by Senator Wright, by the state auditor. None of those are sufficient.
We've got, again, I thought Senator Wright did a very eloquent job of reminding us we're not in the plant permitting business here. We're in the Environmental Quality Committee business, and that raises some issues about the absence of CEQA compliance, which would afford the issuance of valid credits to let these folks go forward. So I am not presuming, nor would I in this committee, I might in the Energy Committee, but I am not presuming in this committee to weigh in on the plant approval process. What I am saying is the permits, the credits, aren't there, and I do think there is some value in sort of asking the ARB to say, so how do we get from here to there, using and building on the information that you have already described.
Well,
and if the author is amenable, I'd ask him to take that as an author's amendment.
According to my sponsors, we would take that.
All right.
Let me just make one other comment, Mr. If I had not witnessed what I've witnessed in the complete gutting of legislation, even to the surprise I observed of one of the members of the committee in his bill, I could maybe accept that an author came forward and his bill contained a single project. There has been no reluctance on the part of the chair or of this committee to completely rewrite these bills today and to include as many projects as is desirable. I will not vote for a bill with a single project in it. I think it's inappropriate. I think it raises serious ethical issues. I am not knowledgeable enough about this project to be sitting as a member of the legislature as to whether we grant special privilege to a particular project. And I would urge caution on the part of the chair in proceeding in this manner.
Duly noted. Senator Runner.
Yeah, just a couple of observations. One is, as the amendment was worded, I don't believe it meets the issues and concerns that Senator Ashburn and I have on two of those districts, on two of the power plants, because we're outside the South Coast District. And so, again, I don't think there's a full understanding of, again, the secondary impact here in regards to two facilities that are hybrid solar that are in the midst of this, that are not only not in South Coast, they are not even, and they are not in that air basin that are caught up in this issue. So again, I appreciate the idea of having an example of something that we're communicating is going to go forward. So therefore, that's supposed to give some message. But at the same time, it seems to me we try to step back and take a little more holistic view too, to see if we can still deliver that message, but also be able to look at other kinds of facilities out there that are kind of caught up into this, that we may be able to put in so that we don't have just a one facility solution. Maybe we end up with a 2 or a 3 facility solution in regards to this, that I think creates at least more reliability in the grid, a clear fairness on the part of this legislature, and also it avoids the concern that Senator Ashburn brought up of why one? What's the idea? Why one? When it is that we're just trying to create a little fairness in both how we treat the people of California, how we treat members in fairness, and also then I think how it is that we also try to do our best to protect the electrical grid for the state of California. So I would hope that there would be at least an openness to look at a broader solution. Again, not opening the floodgates, not letting everything happen, but at least trying to have a conversation if indeed there is a broader solution that could be embracing more projects that make sense in the state of California.
Thank you, Senator Runner. I think both you and Senator Ashburn have made your points well. I do just want to observe that if the measure before us is successful, that contrary to the earlier observation that the legislature should not sit on its hands, we will have approved, notwithstanding the absence of valid credits as the case now stands, 3,000 businesses with the ability to go forward, essential public services with the ability to go forward, and one of the 3 plants with the ability to go forward. All of that, notwithstanding the fact that no one can sit before us today and tell us they've got valid credits. I think that is more than meeting folks halfway. I think that is more than a little bit of a stretch, and I think that is more than a demonstration of mere good faith. I will ask for a motion on the bill.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Senator Pavley and then Senator Hancock. Forgive me, I'm sorry, members.
And apologize, this has been sort of a moving target on this particular bill. We've tried to keep up with all of it. Dr. Wallerstein. I guess the one thing I'm not clear about, I know this power plant subject to litigation in regard to emission reduction credits, but will this bill allow for the permit of the plant under Rule 1315? And isn't that the subject of the lawsuit? And that's
Dr. Wallerstein, before you comment, let me read again that the amendments to the measure which the author agreed to take at the outset were to strike the provision relating to the abrogation of the NRDC case and instead authorize the district to carry out the provisions of this bill, and to revise a reference to the rule relating to credit accounts. So the notion is that the plant would be able to go forward, but there would be a revision to the language in the bill now so that we don't get ourselves tangled up on this issue of the rule and the viability of credits. Let me just make sure.
And how do you revisit the viability of credits?
And let me look to the staff.
Mr. Chair, could I try?
Please, Doctor.
Whatever is the solution worked out for 696, the Lowenthal bill, and this bill regarding how we quantify and have credits to provide to any of these permits is all one and the same. So if we're unable to work that out, then you don't have any of the bills.
And that speaks to the issue earlier of fracking.
Of the lawsuit. And could you reiterate for me your discussion with the author regarding to CEQA review?
We also received agreement from the author that the measure will now require certain findings by the ARB and CEC, that the CEQA exemption would be narrowed, and that the bill will be sunset in 2012. And then in addition, because we had both the Lowenthal and the Wright bills before us, that means that it's now appropriate to remove the essential services, and the author has agreed to take the study language at ARB as well, about how do we deal with this larger set of issues in this context. All right. So, further questions before I go to Senator Hancock?
Nope.
Senator Hancock.
Yeah, I do have some questions about how this relates to the process we've just gone through, which was to eliminate from the net of the litigation small businesses and companies that really had no business being involved. Right now we're dealing with a power plant. I take it this is a new power plant as yet unbuilt?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it that this plant would have been approved if the litigation was not going on? It's been approved by the California Energy Commission.
Yes, Senator.
And it would have received credits. Or is it... so why... And the reason I gather that this power plant is included is the luck of the draw. You did a bill. Okay.
In a manner of speaking.
Well, neither do I.
Senator Hancock, could I follow up on your question for just a quick moment?
See, what I'm also interested in is what, if we wait until the litigation is resolved, so we know if the emissions credits are being granted in a legal and appropriate way, what's lost? Is there imminent danger of blackouts in the South Coast, or what? Because
I think Senator Wright thought that was his cue to return to the building.
Otherwise, it seems to me that we will be going around courts time after time after time with individual power plants, and I'm not comfortable with that either.
Well, what I can say is that obviously the issue of timing is a concern, and the issue of the finances involved. But I turn that over to Tony Gonzalez that can provide you more technical information around that.
Mr. Chairman and members, if I may let Bill Kissinger, our counsel, answer that question. Thank you.
Maybe I should call Dr. Wallerstein. A couple responses, Senator Hancock. First, the project is all but approved by the Energy Commission. The only thing that's standing in the way of it going forward is the credits. The Energy Commission can't approve the project without the credits. Second, in terms of timing, what's the harm in waiting till the litigation resolves itself? The case right now is on appeal. The Superior Court's work is done, but briefing hasn't happened. It'll be a year before there's a decision coming out of the Court of Appeal. And what it does will obviously cause additional proceedings to go on. There is an environmental assessment process that is underway with regard to Rule 1315 in parallel with the appeal. But whatever the outcome is of the litigation, as you heard Mr. Wallerstein say a little bit ago, it will not put in place the Rule 1309.1 that made available the priority reserve. So there won't be any solution that comes out of that litigation. We won't be any closer to permitting the power plant. And then to the question, why go forward with this project now then? What's the rush? Why don't we wait? Part of it is a function of meeting the electrical needs of the state from a reliability perspective, RPS perspective. These are very large capital investments that take a long time to build. This power plant will take roughly 2 years to build. The project can't wait forever. At some point, the supporters, the backers of it, they'll move on to other things. And so if you're talking about a multi-year delay, multi-month delay, this project may well die on the vine.
If I may as well add a little bit to this discussion, the question of why I even introduced this legislation folks may be wondering. And just give you a little bit of background. I come from an area where the recession has hit very strongly, maybe more so than anywhere else in the state of California. People can debate that. Where I have a district where unemployment rates are at 30% on the average in Imperial County. If you go to smaller communities like Sealy or Holtville, Westmoreland, unemployment rates are going to be quite higher. Riverside County, we're at 15%. The issue, obviously, of economic development and recovery, at least for me, is one in which, through this plant, on one end, if we build this out, we can create great jobs. We're talking about 350 union jobs in which folks will receive a prevailing wage as well as health care benefits and all the goodies for them to take care of their families. But on the other end of the spectrum is I truly believe in a green-collar economy. I truly believe that green jobs are the future. And I do believe that at the end of the day, that if we are going to reach the goals, and we have a bill up of 33% by 2020, the only way we're going to be able to do so is if we make sure that we have the infrastructure in place. And so my district is also known as, and this could be debatable as well, but as the crown jewel of renewable energy, in which we have geothermal, in which we have solar, in which we have wind. But the only way we're going to be able to reach our RPS in the future and make change when we talk about our climate and ensuring that we have good public health is if we build out this type of infrastructure that's necessary in order for us to continue to move forward in building out our renewable energies. So I understand the concerns. This is much larger than when I first heard of this, when it came to my attention. And know that I am as well concerned about the bigger fix. And I am concerned about the other plants. And I am concerned about the essential public services and the small sources in our refineries. Eventually we have to work on that. Eventually we have to get to a fix there as well. But I do know that with this bill, with this peaker plant, it has many benefits. Ultimately, not only for my district, even though this bill is a district bill, but it will have many benefits for the state of California.
Further debate or discussion, members? All right. Yes, I'm sorry, Senator Corbett, you had indicated earlier. My apologies.
I just wanted to make sure that we, on the record, answer the question with regard to this bill, too, and I am supportive of it going forward, that this bill does not raise the question of abrogation of the lawsuit.
Yes, that was in the opening presentation of the bill. The author was indicated that he was prepared to take his amendments, author's amendments, among other provisions. The very first one was to strike the provision relating to abrogation of the NRDC case and instead authorize the district to carry out the provisions of this bill. So, on that point, yes. All right. Is there any closing comments, Mr. Burns?
I ask for your aye vote. I ask for your aye vote.
All right. Thank you very much. Call the roll.
Do we have a motion?
I believe we have a motion from Senator Lowenthal.
As amended.
As amended.
Sumedian?
Aye.
Sumedian, aye. Runner?
No.
Runner, no. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Hancock? Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? You have 3 yes, 2 no.
We have 3 yes, 2 no.
Mr. Sumedian, in a courtesy vote, I'm going to review this carefully before it comes to the floor. I have great concerns about the ability of any kind of emissions credits not being there to allow any kind of use to go forward, and I'm not sure why we're up in the legislature to resolve this issue, which is another concern of mine, but I understand the timeliness of allowing this discussion to take place, and I do appreciate the good work of the chair in trying to craft a solution to this challenging problem. And I understand it also relates to the prior bills that are moving forward, Mr. Lowenthal's and Mr. Wright's.
Thank you. We have 2 members not voting. Could I ask the clerk to call the roll again, please?
Hancock.
I will vote aye with the same stipulation as Senator Pavley.
Hancock,
need to know
aye.
more about the effects.
Hancock, aye, and duly noted.
Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye.
Comments duly noted. The vote is?
5 yes, 2 no.
Vote is 5-2. That bill is out. Thank you, Mr. Perez. Thank you all for your patience today. One remaining item. Could we have quiet in the room, please? Thank you. Clerk will call the roll. Call the absent members on SJR 17, agenda item 3.
Runner?
This is SJR 17. This is Mr. Leno's measure.
Runner, no. Lowenthal?
On SJR 17, this is agenda item 3, Mr. Leno's SJR on climate change, ocean acidification.
And may I say I'm a joint author?
And we're pleased to hear it. That put him over the edge. Thank you.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. That's 5 yes, 2 no.
5 yes, 2 no. The measure is passed. Thank you. Without objection, hearing is adjourned.